Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm T with Teresa H Creates, and happy Mother's Day. We're celebrating Mother's Day on Sunday, May 10th in the United States. And every year I make a Mother's Day card for my mom, and it's always just a little bit elaborate. And this is the card that I have made this year. I wanted to show you how I did this. So it is a gatefold card with these little semicircles here, and you pull this out that says Happy Mother's Day. You can write your note on the back and then open the gatefold, and then it's nice and decorated in the front. You could also put messages on the sides here if you wanted. The inspiration for this card actually came from a video I saw. It was just a quick short video. It might have been a reel, and I can't remember if it was Facebook or if it was on YouTube, but there was a creator that was making the gatefold cards, and I don't know what size it was. She was using little corners here to stick something in, which I thought was adorable. My initial intent was to create something similar that had the little corner tucks, but it just wasn't working for the size card that I was making, and I really liked the idea of doing the little semicircles in the center to keep the gatefold closed and just sliding this in here. This is totally scalable. You can make it as large or as small as you want, and I don't even know if she was making a card or if the creator was making a folio, like a small folio to put in a junk journal. I'm a card maker and a junk journaler, so I get lots of different inspo videos, and I cannot remember her name. I didn't save the video. I just saw the real quick short and then moved on. So if any of you have seen that video and know who that creator is, let me know in the comment section. I would love to give her credit, but that video is what inspired this card. So let's go ahead and get started. My card measures 6 by 6. So I'm going to use a 12 by 12 sheet of white paper. For me, it was just the easiest way to get the exact measurement that I need, and I wasn't going to have to do like any 1/8 of an inch type measuring. So let me pull out my guillotine cutter, and then I am going to cut this down to 6. Let's cut that in half, and now I've got a 12 by 6. Traditionally, I use a very heavy cardstock for my bases. I use the Nina Solar White cardstock, but it only comes in regular paper sizes that I'm aware of. So it's only 8.5 by 11. So I opted to just go with the 12 by 12 paper and cut it down. So this 12 by 12 has a light texture on it. The texture isn't necessary. That's really not important. And it's pretty lightweight, but I'm going to layer so much stuff on it that it'll be sturdy by the time we're done. All right, let's start from the left and go over to 3 inches and give it a score. And then we're going to go from the right and come over 3 inches to 9 and give it a score. Now I've got my bone folder. I want to make sure that this lines up and then give it a good burnish. And then this side, I'm going to line it up as well and give it a good burnish. There we go. And now I have the base for my gatefold card. So it is now 6 by 6 inches, and each of these little flaps is 3 inches in width. This was a good size for me to work with considering the tools that I'm going to be using to make this card. So let's go ahead and look at our supplies. I've raided my Anna Griffin stash for this project. So I do have a package of 12 by 12 paper. It wasn't a complete package. I think I purchased it in a haul, but this is Garden Party paper pad. And let me show you what I have left in this pad. So I would like to pull a sheet of 12 by 12 for my accents. I'm going to use this pink. I don't have a whole lot of options, but I may use either this or this one. So let me go ahead and take one of each of those out as well. So I would say you're going to need probably 2 to 3 coordinating pieces of paper. 6 by 6 paper is fine as long as you have several sheets, just in case there are mistakes. Never, right? Never mistakes. Okay, so these are the papers that I am looking at. And then I've also pulled out my Anna Griffin Finishing School Craft Box China Cabinet and Heirloom Lace. These were for card making, and I swear I've only made a couple of cards with these. I don't ever use things for their intended purpose. I always pilfer them for supplies for other projects. Definitely going to need some gold foil. We've got some beautiful flower stickers, some dimensional ones. I am going to use this die set. This is really pretty. I want to find a paper to use for my background, and I kind of like this with all the pinks that I've already chosen. This is what I used for my other card, so I won't use that again. These are actually the decorative cards that come with the kit, but I'm just using them for background. That is pretty. I like that touch of green. The purple doesn't really work. No. I mean, that one's not bad, but I don't think so. Okay, and then these are pretty plain. All right, so let's go with one of these. Let's just go ahead and keep it in the rose themes, and I'm going to just go with the pink. So we'll do that. All right, and I can put this away, and let's just see if there's anything in here that I might want. I think this one I've pilfered the most. I don't think there's anything in there that I'm going to need, so I'm going to set this aside. Let's take a look at the card. So I did do a matte layer of gold on all of these gold foils. So I'm going to need to have quite a few sheets of the gold foil. And then this center piece is going to be one of these cards. I think we decided with this one, so that will go there, right? And then this will go on either side. And then whatever paper I decide to use, the pink or the white background, will go on the front panels and also on this little disc. And then additional paper in this pink will go on the sides here for that little half circle. So let's just see. I mean, what do we think? Let's go with the lighter because we've already got lots of shades of pink. So I'm going to go with the white. We're going to do that one. There's a lot of die cutting with this one, but honestly, it goes pretty quickly. And if you don't have a die cutting machine, this does not mean you need to run out and buy one. You could go ahead and use square cuts to make this same card. You don't have to have a circle in the center. But if you wanted to use a circle, you could always use items that you already have in your stash. Like this right here, I think would be the perfect size for this little embellishment. So you could always just take containers and just trace them to have a nice base or a nice circle. So use what you have for sure. So this one flap is 3 by 6. And then I'm going to need a layer of gold that is going to measure 5 3/4 by 2 3/4. My floral layer is going to be 2.5 by 5.5. And I'll put these measurements in the description box. But basically, whenever you cut your base out, you're just going to start moving your layers in by 1/4 inch. And that will give you nice matted layers. It'll be nice and even. So every layer you add, just take off 1/4 inch from top and side and you'll be good. All right, so let's go ahead and start with some cuts. I'm gonna bring my guillotine back out. And I believe this is 6 by 6. So for my gold, I'm going to need a sheet inside, and this is 6 by 6. So this is going to have to be 5 3/4 by 5 3/4. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, that's that center piece. Now I'll do the flaps. So we're going to go 2 3/4 by 5 3/4. I'm going to do that twice. Now let's move on to our specialty papers. I want to make sure that I get a nice bit of image in there. So I'm going to use this section here because I want there to be quite a bit in there. So we're going to go to 5.5. I really want these guys to be in there. So I'm going to cut a little bit off the bottom. I took off 1 inch on the bottom. So now we're going to go 5. I'm going to turn it back around and go 5.5 by 2.5. There's our first panel. There we go. So these are our outside panels. And then our inside panels, 5.5 by 2.5. And then this one, this pattern doesn't matter as much. And we are good. And now I need to cut this down. This is already 5.5 by 5.5, but I do need to go ahead and remove the back side of this card. There we go. All right, let me move this aside. So this is what it looks like. Here we go. It'll be here and here. We'll have these on the inside, and then here and here, and these on the outside, just like this. Now, this large circle here comes from this die set. So I am going to cut this out. So this is this large gold circle. And then this is the decorative piece here. So this is pattern paper. I'm going to cut it from this guy here, and look, that's perfect. And then this guy here, I like to be very conservative with my specialty papers. So I'm actually going to remove that centerpiece right from this. And I know that this is the matte layer for this, but this is pretty heavy cardstock, so it'll sit on here nicely without dipping down in the center. I'll be able to cut that border from this piece and then still use it as a matte layer. So there we go. And then I've got to cut the corners. So I am going to cut these corners, and I'm going to cut them from the panels. So we'll do one panel and another inside panel to cut those corners. And I've also got to cut this and then this little medallion. All right, I am going to have to bring in another sheet of gold foil because I need to cut this out. This is my Happy Mother's Day. And then I'm also going to have to cut this circle out because I'm going to use it as a matte layer. I actually need to cut this a little differently so that I have this extra on the edge. Because if I just cut this size and then this, I'm not going to have the extra on the edge. So I've got to cut a little more than half and a little more than half. So I'll have to cut that twice. It'll make sense, I think, as we start doing it, but I'm going to need this. And then we said one more gold sheet for these guys. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. I'm going to pull out my die cut machine and go ahead and cut these. I'll speed through this part so that you see the process, but we get through it quickly. All right, I've got all of my bits and pieces. Let's go ahead and start assembling. I'm going to use a combination of double-sided tape and wet glue. I'm sorry for the noise. My lawn guy decided to show up right now. And he's right outside my window, so hopefully it passes soon. He's usually pretty quick. Pop this down. Make sure I've got enough clearance on each side, top, bottom. We look good. All right. You don't have to use a combination of double-sided tape and wet glue. That is not necessary, but I do recommend that if you're going to layer onto specialty paper like foil or glitter, that you use a wet glue, because long-term tape will not stick to those specialty papers. So I like having the tape layer, the double-sided tape layer on here because it's going to initially give me some grab because this is really smooth and slick, and so that wet glue will kind of tend to move around some. So this double-sided tape will help give it some grab, but long-term, that double-sided tape is not going to stick, so that's when the glue kicks in, and that's why I double up on the two. So specialty paper, definitely use a wet glue. If you can use both, use both. That would be my recommendation. Let's go for our inside panels. Again, I'm going to hit it with double-sided tape and wet glue. All right. And let's see here. It needs to come down just a little bit. I'm glad I came across that video. I was having a hard time deciding what I was going to do this year for a Mother's Day card. Like I said, I like to do something pretty elaborate for Mom for Mother's Day. And she watches my channel, so that's why I do it close to Mother's Day so that she doesn't get too much of a sneak peek on what her card's going to look like. But one of these is for my mother, and then the other will be for my wonderful mother-in-law. Now we can add these pretty pink pieces. And again, because I'm going to be gluing onto that foil, I definitely want to use a wet adhesive. I don't think it matters too much what direction this is in, but let's see. No. All right, we're going to pop this down here. There we go. And once you get all the cutting done, this is really, it comes together very quickly. Now we can go ahead and get our little gold corners down. You might have noticed that some of these dies I ran through a couple of times forward and backwards. If they're really intricate dies and have a lot of little frilly bits like this, or if they're phrases, sentiments that have thin lines that I'm cutting, I usually roll through twice just to make sure that I get good clean cuts, especially on some of this thicker, especially for some of this thicker paper. This foil paper from Griffin is pretty thick. It's a nice solid foil. And these are popping out really easy. So I did get good cuts here, but she's got good quality dies too. Just gonna use my glue on this. There's not really a place to put any tape anyway. All right, let's get that close to that corner there. Put this up in this corner. All right, down in this corner, and then it'll go in this corner. Before I start working on those front panels though, I'm going to give this a good press and make sure that all of my glue is dry and that none of it is on the outside, because when I flip it over, I don't want to glue this to my paper. And I think we're all good. Everything seems to be dry. Now I'm going to do my panels for the front. I'm not going to try to do it while it's closed because the gatefolds just flop open. So it's easier to do this with it just flipped over. Right there. Go. Now for our panels, let me see which way I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to do it this way and this way. I think that looks good. All right, there we go. Looking good. Let me clean up my glue mess. All right, I'm going to set that aside and let that dry. Now let's go ahead and work on this guy. I think I've got all the little bits and pieces out of it. And then it is going to fit on this. Looks good. I'm going to put tape in the center, but I'm going to put glue around all the edges. All right, and then make sure I've got this somewhat lined up. Does that look good? Looks good. Make sure this glue is down. Some of these edges are trying to pop up. There we go. Beautiful. And then we get to put our Mother's Day on here. Let's go ahead and pop this out. Some of the lines on this die cut are pretty delicate, so I just left it in the die so that it wouldn't get bent up or anything while I was working. So now I've just got to go in and pop it out. Make sure it's loose and then gently pry it from the die. There we go. How pretty is that? So I think I kind of like it like this. So we'll do Happy Mother's Day right across there. This art glitter glue dries pretty fast, so I'm going to try to hit this as quickly as possible. Thank goodness for these fine tips on this glue. Otherwise this would be impossible. And I noticed that there are a couple of areas that still need to be weeded that I didn't quite get. Right there, and right there. Good to go. All right. Let me pop this down. Happy Mother's Day. And the good thing about this foil is that if you get glue on it, you can wipe it right off. I'm going to set that aside. Now let's go to our tuck pieces. So I'm going to place those here and here. This I need to cut in half, so I'm going to cut it right along that line. All right, so now I've got 1/2 and 1/2. I'm going to put a bit of tape here and a bit of tape here. And then I'm going to use my wet glue on the rest of it. Not liking this because it doesn't give me much room here. So I didn't cut this quite wide enough. Maybe. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give it a trim so that these have just a nice little border. All right. And then the way this is going to fit I measured it out on my other one. If I do one single straight line of tape and then put glue over it, I'll be able to glue it right on this side. And then it'll give me enough clearance to slide that little card through between those. And I'm going to line it up with that gold edge. So let's do that. So right on the edge, right on the edge. And then I'm going to add some wet glue and wet glue. And then I am going to place this down where my eyeball thinks it should go and give it a good press. And I'm going to do the same on this side, making sure that I'm lining them up roughly the same place. And I'm going to give it a good press. And I want this to dry before I try squeezing that circle in there. But let's go ahead and decorate the inside a little bit. So we can put something in here. I have all these beautiful florals. These are all dimensional. And I was worried at first that adding the dimension in here would actually bulk it up too much and I wouldn't be able to close this, but I was able to just fine. It did fine. So again, I kind of like that circle there. But then that looks kind of plain without anything else in there. See, my other one had a circle in the center. So that worked. Let's go back to our box. And this one is china cabinet, so I think it was supposed to look like place settings. But I think that there, yep, here we go. There was some little plates in there. So we can fix this. So let's see. I mean, we could do something like that. It would peek out a little bit, but that's fine. And then we could do that. No. Oh, what if we did something like that? Did this around it. I don't really like it sticking out on the edges, so I think I'm going to give it a trim. I think that if I trim it up along this edge here, that it won't be visible on the outside, but I'll still have enough room to attach it on the inside. Let's give that a shot. Yes, indeed. And then solid, we're good. Perfect. All right, let me peel off this backing. I think removing the sticker backing is probably the hardest thing that I do with this card. Go ahead and carefully peel this off. Like all of it to come off. Don't tear, don't tear. And then there's just this little bit here. And there we go. All right. I'm going to add a small amount of glue right here. And then we'll go ahead and just kind of place this guy. I think that looks, yeah, that looks good. Okay. Now I'm going to run my tape runner and glue over the rest of it. I always use glue on my stickers because I don't trust the sticker adhesive long-term, almost like the washi. I don't trust washi adhesive long-term either. There we go. Let's do it like that. Perfect. All right, now we can put this little guy down in the center. He's just a little guy, so I'm not really going to worry about tape with this. The glue is enough to hold it down. So let's see. Okay, we move these guys out of the way. Sweet. Isn't that nice? So then we pop it closed, and then this will go right in here. Let's make sure nothing's glued down. So right there. Happy Mother's Day. And now we just need a little floral here on each side. What do we think? Something like this. I put my florals away too soon. Let's bring them back out. Oh, look, what about this? We could do something like this. or something like this. Which do we like? Let's do that. I like that. Okay. So let me peel this sticker off. I think that this is such a cute idea, and it's a really cute little style. I could see using this in my junk journals. I can see making additional cards using this same style. And they don't all have to be this elaborate. And you don't need a lot of extra stuff. Honestly, you could have slipped something that was square in here again, and it would have been fine. Or you could have used the little corner pockets and tucked something in there. Still fine. Work with what you've got. I just happen to have a lot of Anna Griffin kits laying around, and I like to be able to use them up. And there we go. Isn't that cute? Okay, now I can clear the flowers off. So those are my 2 Mother's Day cards for 2026. I absolutely love them. I love the way that this turned out. And again, you can slide this out and write your message on the back of this, or you can write your message on the inside panels here, or they could just be strictly decorative. You know, it could be set up and displayed. Let's go ahead and move this. And then look at that. I think they are just the cutest. How very neat. Again, if anyone saw this short or this reel that inspired me to make this little gatefold card with the closure, let me know. I'd love to give that person credit, but this is my take on it. And again, I think it is absolutely adorable. Cutest little Mother's Day cards, and a great way to use up a lot of your pattern paper. All right, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for crafting with me, and until next time, bye.